The slap that was heard around the world, that is going to be the topic of this episode of Chi Life. So this is a bit of an unusual topic for this vlog, and a bit late to the topic as well, but people are still talking about it, and I think there's some things that are really interesting and for me quite concerning about this event that happened. So in case you missed it somehow, I think most people know what I'm talking about already, but at the Academy Awards, at the Oscars, there was something that happened where Will Smith went up and slapped the host of the Oscars, who was a comedian, and slapped him across the face after he made a joke that he clearly, well, it's not actually clear that he personally took offense to it, because the video footage shows Will Smith laughing, and it looks like a very genuine laugh. And then his wife rolls her eyes at him, and then Will gets up and storms on stage and slaps the host across the face about this joke, and then sits back down and yells and swears at him and so on. And so that's what happened in a nutshell, if you missed it. And if you're wondering about the joke, I'm not going to retell the joke, but some people seem to think it was quite offensive, and then a lot of other people seem to think it was a very mild joke. And again, Will Smith himself was laughing what seemed to be a very genuine laugh at the joke before his wife rolled her eyes and seemed to prod him into action. So why am I talking about this? You know, it's just a little fracas between some celebrities, you know, maybe no big deal in the scheme of things. I think there are some things in here that are a big deal, and there's a lot of potential consequences flowing out from this. And that's why I'm going to talk about it, and it does tie in a sense with Qigong and of course particularly with Kung Fu. I've done a lot of Kung Fu in conjunction with the Qigong training and teaching that I do as well. And what's even more concerning to me, or far more concerning to me really, than this little fracas between two celebrities, because, you know, in the end, it's a bit of celebrity drama. You know, how important is that in the world? But what happened after that is very concerning. After this incident had taken place, Will Smith was not removed from that ceremony, from that award ceremony. He continued to sit in the front row, and later on won an award and stood up and gave an acceptance speech where people then clapped for him afterwards. I think that's really disturbing that the incident was handled in that way. There's multiple layers to this. One, even just on the celebrity thing, okay, some drama between celebrities. But the fact is that lots of people look up to celebrities. They gain a lot of attention. And so what they do often shapes opinions, and from those opinions then shapes the way other people act. That there was no immediate repercussion, no immediate consequence for that action, to me is shocking. Absolutely shocking that they would allow someone who just physically assaulted the host who is doing their job to remain in the ceremony and then gave them an award is just shocking. And then another step of things beyond that I find quite shocking, quite disturbing, is the response that I've seen from quite a number of people, including people who I know, who I really think should know much better. Now look, a lot of people have condemned what Will Smith did, and I think rightly so. But then I've seen others defend it and even say they approve of it, that they support him because he was defending his wife. And seeing people do this just, I find that shocking. That somehow amongst all of this, within our society, and again, people who I know, people who in many ways I would have thought to be quite reasonable people, quite peaceful people, to think that this sort of action, this sort of behavior is in any way acceptable or justifiable, I find shocking. Have we become so separated from physical reality that we think this sort of thing can be justified? I think amongst some of them there's, ideas of old-fashioned chivalry and things like that, and just entirely misplaced. There's a reason why. I think most people are going to be familiar with this. As young children, a lot of us were taught a simple saying about sticks and stones, that sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And that simple lesson in there, which again we teach to small children, the difference between violent action and nasty words. And the idea that, if someone actually tries to physically harm you, well, then some kind of response might be justified to protect yourself. But that, yes, while, the things people say can be unpleasant, it's really on us, our response to those, and whether we allow that to hurt us. There's a big difference between some nasty words and some nasty actions. And somehow it seems that a portion of our society has lost sight of that. And I find that quite shocking. I think surely a lot of this must be that for some of these people, they've become separated from physical reality in some way. I think so much in our modern world, we live in our heads, and so they think that words are as bad as actions, and they're really not. There's context around that, prolonged abuse, false accusations, things that then have, clear consequences to them. Yes, that can be just as bad as physical actions, of course. But someone saying something a bit mean, a bit offensive, a bit insulting, they're not even close. Words can be much more easily undone than actions and the effects of those actions. And I tend to think that maybe these people who in some way support, even some of them condone even these actions that took place, this physical assault, maybe have no real understanding of violence and why there is a really clear line that we do not cross. And societally, we've accepted this for quite some time. In many ways, society's come a long way, and thank goodness for that, in terms of particularly of not accepting violence. Now, again, that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, but we don't accept it. We don't say, oh yeah, that was fine, right? We go, no, that's not acceptable. And that people have just drifted away from this, and yeah, I think they're separated from the physical reality. They think like, oh well, some names, oh that really hurts me, therefore that's the same as a physical assault. I think these people maybe don't really understand violence and the consequences this can have, and the spiral effect that can come once violence is initiated. And that's a bit scary to me in a way, because if people feel like it's okay to justify violence for such inconsequential things, that's scary. What can come from that the actions people will then support and the way that can spiral and escalate. There are good reasons why societally we don't accept violence, except in specific circumstances where you are actually physically protecting yourself or others, not protecting them against names or insults, physically protecting them from harm, sometimes physically protecting property as well. And beyond that, it's just not acceptable. It's not something we do because the consequences can be so harsh and can quickly spiral out of control and are very, very hard to be undone once they get out of control. So how does this tie into Qigong and Kung Fu? Having, I think, hopefully made my opinion on this quite clear. It's interesting. I haven't been active in teaching much Kung Fu lately. A little bit now and then, helping out some of the other instructors, but been really busy with the Qigong teaching, and just my schedule hasn't really allowed it. I hope I'll start doing a bit more in the near future, but that's how it's been. But when I was teaching Kung Fu a lot, every day basically, and dealing with a lot of different people, sometimes we would get people coming in who did have an idea that maybe they thought violence might be okay, right? And that maybe they would learn that they could be really tough, and then if someone says something mean or something, well, then they'll be able to fight them back and make them pay, sort of thing. Occasionally we'd come across people like that with that sort of attitude, and generally what would happen as they continue with the training is one of two things. Either they would leave, they just wouldn't stick around because they found out that the rest of the people training didn't share those same attitudes. We weren't going to buy into that kind of way of thinking, and so they didn't feel comfortable. And so they'd figure out, well, this wasn't the place for them, and so they'd leave. We weren't going to teach them to encourage them in any way, give them any support for unwarranted aggression, and so they didn't feel like they fit in. Or the other thing that would happen, and this was probably more common, is that as they got into the training, they started to become familiar with the reality of violence, right? Because you're actually facing it head on. You're training, and certainly in the way that we train Kung Fu, there's a lot of actual physical contact as part of it. Now, we're not trying to hurt each other, as in injure each other. We're simply working with each other to develop skills and develop resilience. But there's quite a lot of physical contact as part of that, and a lot of it hurts, as in pain. Not trying to injure, there's a distinction there. There can be pain, but we're trying not to actually damage. And this is with consent. This is to help each other. This is very different from aggression and violence against someone else. This is training to develop each other, to develop skills and confidence and resilience. But in facing that violence in a safe environment, still in a safe, supportive, controlled environment, they start to understand the reality of it, and they start to understand that there's no need to hurt other people unnecessarily. The consequences can be severe if you do that, for both them and for you. But then they also start to develop confidence in themselves. They start to understand that if there was a situation that justified that, they would be capable of it. But that they would only ever be interested in enacting violence on someone else in a situation that truly warrants it. So all those other situations that maybe hurt them a bit more before, those names or insults or whatever it might be, just lose as much significance for them. They start to find that they can put that into perspective better, and realizing that Whether you get hurt by those names or not is up to you. And developing that physical confidence and that understanding of that dynamic interaction between each other in a violent conflict helps them to have that confidence to put aside the slights, the insults, and recognize that that doesn't justify violence. It's not worth it. And so that's really the positive side of Kung Fu training, martial arts training, of facing violence head on rather than having a fantasy delusional idea about it. You actually then recognize, I think, much more clearly, when is this justified, when is this not justified? And your inclination will generally be that it's almost never justified. There are very rare exceptions, and we'd all rather avoid those. So, carrying on to Qigong. How does this fit in with Qigong as well? Well, I think Qigong can give us some of those same benefits. Obviously not necessarily the fighting skills and things like that, but some of those same benefits of being able to develop confidence in yourself and be able to put things into perspective. With Qigong, we strengthen ourselves in other ways. So it's not that same hard physical interaction necessarily. Although some Qigong practices can be quite physically challenging. So maybe I'll come back to that a little bit later. Primarily in Qigong, of course, we're working at the level of our energy. Now, in order for us to work with our energy, we also need to bring our mind and our body into harmony as well as part of that. And so as we work with our energy, we work to make our energy flow smooth and strong. We strengthen our energy in some very real ways. And as part of that, as our energy becomes stronger and we become more skilled with it, we become less reactive to things around us. So we start to become more in control of our responses. Rather than, possibly seeing ourselves as a passive reactor to what happens around us, where something happens and then it just has an effect on us. We either respond in a certain way or maybe it hurts us in a certain way. As we develop skill, we start to realize that we have options and we don't have to respond in a particular way. We don't have to let things harm us in a particular way. And we start to have more resilience in that way, that things can happen around us. And again, back to the example of someone calling names or insulting, we realize much more clearly that we're in charge of how our mind and body and our energy responds to that. And so we're in charge of whether we let a name or an insult hurt us, because we direct our energy rather than passively responding to what's going on around us. And so this is quite a tangible thing that you develop from your Qigong practice. People sometimes think of it, what we get from Qigong in a way, in a more passive way. Oh, you get karma and this sort of thing. And that's true. Yes, you do get karma. Maybe you can focus better. And of course, there's all the health benefits, all that sort of thing. But also, ideally, we develop skill with our mind, skill with our body, skill with our energy. And this puts us in a much greater position to really take charge of our actions, of our responses, and to start to feel more confident, more comfortable in dealing with all of the many different challenging things that we face in our lives, including things like insults and names and so on. And so Qigong can give us some of those benefits in a similar but different way, working more at that energy level. But again, it does give this confidence and this greater control and responsibility for yourself in many ways. And so, coming out of this, I guess one of the things that made me want to make this vlog on this unusual topic is As I've mentioned, I've primarily been teaching Qigong, and very, very busy with that over the last several years. I haven't been teaching so much Kung Fu. And Kung Fu is something that I really enjoy. I just haven't had the time. But seeing the flow-on effects, or what has happened from this silly incident between two celebrities, and how detached people, or some people within society, have become from the effects of violence, and from being able to, I think clearly about violence, and the possible implications of that, the bad place that can lead to, I think has, in a way, reawakened maybe an appreciation of the value of people doing martial arts training. Beyond the Qigong, there's so much value that people get from Qigong, of course, but also the specific value that they gain from that martial arts training, from that Kung Fu training, and not in the way that some people assume. Again, not in the way that it's like, oh yeah, well, I can go and beat people up. The real value is the confidence that you get, the confidence to not go and beat someone up, to not act out, the confidence to have greater control over yourself. So yeah, I guess I was always planning to get back to teaching more Kung Fu at some point, and that time probably isn't just yet. I've got a lot of other things on my plate right now. But yeah, this incident and the flow-on effects from it really gave me pause for thought about just how important, I think not just valuable, important it is for people to have a real understanding of violence, because when you really understand it, you're in a better position to have less of it. And I think that's a better thing for the world. So anyway, those are my rambling thoughts today on a bit of celebrity current events. Strange topic again, as I mentioned, but anyway, I felt like it was a good idea to make a vlog on this topic. If you liked the vlog, please comment, subscribe, share, all those good things. I'm sure I'll be making another one soon. I don't know what the topic will be. It might be back to our regular programming, or maybe it'll be on another unusual topic. We'll see.